Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Somewhat Scholarly. My name is Alan Hibbard, and today we have a very special guest, a professor of psychiatry at the University of Munich, Thomas G. Schultz. Professor, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks for having me, Alan. It's a pleasure. Yes, I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. I am fantastic. I'm very excited for this discussion. I know we've got so many high-level things to talk about, obviously mental
Well,
health, and
yep,
all the crazy things going on in the world. That there's so much. We
yep.
talked before the show. We're going to touch on Catalonia, the Uyghur genocide, Julian Assange, and possibly a whole lot more. So,
Yes,
my goodness, the world is a crazy place. So
absolutely.
let me just start by getting your take on, what is the state of the world like in your opinion right now in terms of mental health and just how people are thinking about their own reality. What is it like?
Well, I think we have to. Your show is called Somewhat Scholarly. I mean, if we think of let's focus on the scholarly part. Uh, just speaking as a psychiatrist, as a professor of psychiatry, and representing world organizations in the field of psychiatry, I basically will have to say, first of all, that mental health is a big, big issue. It has always been a big issue, and just we have to be aware, and people don't know it, that mental illness is devastating. Mental illnesses are devastating, and they contribute to a big chunk of the global burden of disease, as we call it. So if you look at, there's a list, it's called the WHO list, global burden of disease, and it looks at years of life lost due to illnesses. And people might say, well, cancer, cardiovascular, whatever, infectious diseases. Yes, sure. But in this top 10 list are like three to five psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, substance abuse, and so forth. So mental illness has a big impact on mental health, on global health, on individual health, but also global health. And so, and the lifetime prevalence, as we call it, that's the likelihood that someone might develop in his or her lifetime a mental illness, is around 30-40%. So every third person at one point in their life will suffer from a psychiatric illness. So this is big. And this has been always like that. I mean, when we go back in literature, maybe even in ancient times, these disorders maybe had different names or so, but they were there. There are some disorders that, in times of crises, like economic crisis, we had this in Greece, economic downturn a few years ago, suicide rates go up, or anxiety levels go up. Now in the pandemic, definitely we see that more and more people need mental health experts, need counseling, especially kids who are at home. My kids right now here, they are driving me crazy, they're driving themselves crazy. You know what I mean? There are certain times when mental health is challenged even more. There is a certain stable, percentage that has always been there, but then there are times when there are certain crises, and they will impact even more so. But mental health, bottom line, very important. Mental illness, not to be neglected.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's so sad to me. Like, I've been an educator at different points in my life, and mental health isn't even a part of any academic curriculum. like it's just not there unless you go to school for it, as you've done, psychiatry and so forth. And just speaking anecdotally about what's been happening lately, my fiance is a therapist and she's been working remotely for years. And the nature of her caseload is really changing with the pandemic. And a lot of people who are having a lot of problems who didn't really have problems before, it's things in the
Right.
last year have really caused things. And on top of that, just last night, I heard that my cousin's best friend committed suicide last week. She was a senior in high school and she hung herself. And like
Awesome.
this type of thing is happening, and it's not in the news the way we see like COVID cases in the news. And
It is. Yes,
I mean,
that's right.
mental health is just
Not
so important, and we don't have a discussion around it. So yeah, I don't know. What do we do? What do we do about it? How do we fix the problem?
well, there will never be a fix in the sense that you fix it and then it's like a broken faucet or so, and then the faucet is good again, or good to go. It's like, or you replace it. You can't replace your brain. You can't replace maybe you know you can't replace body parts in a way. And so we can. The most important thing is to first of all raise awareness. That's what we're doing right now. That's called basically primary prevention. And it should start early on. It should start in kindergarten. It should start in elementary school and go on. It should be in the business world. It should be in a high-paced work environment. We should make this part of a daily routine, or thinking about mental health, mental hygiene, so to speak, should be part of each and everyone's curriculum in any place and any workplace, place of school, and so forth. That's the first thing. And so you need to train people to see the signs and symptoms. I'm not saying that we will never be able to totally prevent these things from happening, right? But if we raise the awareness, and we know that there have been studies like these experiments where a whole community, like in famous Gotland study and Sweden, or where a whole island, like off in the Baltic Sea, where basically they trained each and every general practitioner and to look out for symptoms. And by doing this, you can reduce the number of suicides and so forth if you watch out. But as soon as you stop, well, things go up again. So it just tells you that actually by raising awareness in the population, in the healthcare field, you can bring about change. But that doesn't mean that it will stay on, right? And also, what we and so it's the public, it's the doctors, it's the policymakers, and so forth. So we need to do this. And then this is, I think, the biggest part. And then we need to reduce stigma. That's easily said. It's hard. But what helps sometimes is when famous, people, celebrities, when they come out, right? When they say, "Look, I have that," and then this raises the awareness. Sometimes it can be a little bit detrimental when they are saying weird things, or think of the Kanye West thing when he presented his disorder as something cool. And it's not cool. Most people suffer, right? Many people commit suicide. So we have to strike a balance here. I think it's good that people come out and say this, because then you say, wow, this guy has it. He's a cool guy. He's a great sports guy, football, a football player, what have you. And he has that. Wow. That means you are not crazy when you have that. You're just sick. And we need to do something about it. So this is another level policy, and we need to have measures in place that mental health parity, so that if you have cancer and your health insurance pays for that, well, then they should pay even for like 3-4 months when you're out of work because of a depression, which we haven't achieved yet, especially in the United States. So there are so many things. So I could go on and on, but just to give you a general idea, it's like general prevention, primary, talk about it, education, and of course research. That's what I do. Research, try to find better cures and so forth.
Yeah, a lot of options, and I'm a huge believer that any social movement starts with the individual, right? It's like the only thing I can't control policy, but I can control what I do. So if it's an issue of mental health, I can work on my own mental health, right? And then people around me will see that and so forth. And
Absolutely.
it's a small step, but it's what one person can do. So yeah, it's just just prioritizing your own mental health, and then then the people around you will do the same, and it's just a ripple effect. And who knows, maybe it takes a generation to affect change, but better than.
And again, yeah, and the stigma thing is really something we need to work on, because this is, I think, one of the biggest roadblocks on our way to helping the people with who suffer from mental illness, because if somebody points a finger at you and thinks, well, he's hearing voices, he's strange, he's what is he doing? He's just lazy. He cannot get his act together. I'm depressed too once in a while. When you have that kind of attitude, that will definitely make a person who is sick even sicker, will make this person withdraw even more and feel even more worthless, and so forth. So that's why the education is so important, that the stigma kills. And so there we have to work. I think especially in America, the justice system, where very often people have to fight that. So I'm not saying that everyone who commits a crime should then claim, well, I have a mental illness. Not everybody who has a psychiatric disorder and commits a crime did so, and not knowing what he or she was doing. So I'm not saying this, but very often in American justice system, it is often overlooked, or the barrier, the threshold is the bar is set so high for people to claim some mental incompetence or so. So I think that's also where we have to look. When a mother kills like 5 kids, and then they want to sentence her to death or so because she was on medication, so she was fine, she didn't have anything. That's where I think we have to look closer at. We have to be more compassionate, and so that's where I would like to see stigma removed, because that's where stigma really hits.
Yeah, that stuff is so like crazy to me, and just the idea of the death penalty. I mean, in the modern era, maybe like the Middle Ages, like okay,
that's another big thing in America, right?
Yeah, it's like if we think that murdering is wrong, whether you're murdering your children or a stranger or whatever, if murder is wrong, then why are we gonna like sanction murder by the state and say like, all right, so we'll murder in retaliation? I mean, two wrongs don't make a right. So it doesn't really make sense to me. That I think there should be a better way, and I think compassion is a key. Anyways, I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but we could talk about the criminal justice system, or as some people.
I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a forensic psychiatrist. It just came to my mind that's where I think mental health. We all know that look, I mean, looking at the American, and it's not me saying that. There is a lot smarter people who are looking at the American penal system, who is incarcerated, or who are the people on the street, the homeless. Very often these are the people that are have mental issues, and so there we that's where primary prevention starts. I mean, if you go down Skid Row, slippery slope, whatever, grow up in a bad neighborhood, have no chance at good schooling, no chance at no good healthcare, don't even have glasses, or kids. That's what I always see when I'm privileged. I live in Germany. I live in upstate New York. I go back and forth. My kids go back and forth. School here, sometimes school there, and so forth. But then my daughter, being a Girl Scout, they would go to a place where they build beds for kids because they don't have beds. In the 21st century in Syracuse, they have to go to a place called Heavenly Beds, where they have where they build beds for kids who otherwise would sleep on the floor in a rat infested home. And you know what I mean? This is where justice starts, and with a little bit of and I think we can go down the road. So that's where it starts. That's where mental hygiene starts, where mental health starts, and then we would give kids a good education. Don't leave any child behind, and then we can actually cover a good part of the problems we see later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so crazy how many people are in need of help of so many different kinds. It just blows my mind every time I hear about it. Yeah, even in Syracuse, because I'm from upstate New York, so I'm familiar with the Syracuse area, and it's like, wow, yeah, there's just a lot of people in need. Yeah, long story short. So yeah, interesting. Well, discussion of the prison system makes me think of Julian Assange, and I know we were going to talk about him anyway. So I haven't really been following, any of the recent developments or anything. I know he's obviously been in prison for several years now. I lose track of time. But what is your involvement in his case? Like, why is that of interest to you? And kind of how much time do you spend with that?
Well, so first of all, I think everyone has heard of Julian Assange. I think many people, and there are many misconceptions. And look, when I looking back, remember the times when WikiLeaks was new. People thought, I think most people would think back then, or what were thinking, well, that's cool. That's what we need. That's what an open society needs. We need to have freedom of press, freedom of speech. And if somebody leaks something and you find out about a horrible thing, about crimes, about wrongdoings, government overreach, that we report that, especially in America. Come on. So I think many people like this whole idea. Then came this thing, the collateral damage, collateral murder, what's called, the video where WikiLeaks showed that, in Iraq, American soldiers killed this group of Reuters journalists actually in Iraq, mistook them for whatever terrorists. And there was also this language that they used. It showed the brutality, and it showed actually something that could be considered a war crime. So now, and then, but that's where the persecution, as we say, as most people will say, started. I mean, Julian Assange reported that he got the data from, now Chelsea Manning. We all know that, and so, but then I didn't really follow this whole thing anymore. But suddenly, what happened then was suddenly Julian Assange got portrayed as the beast. Suddenly he was the guy who raped someone, who raped women in Sweden, whatever. He's now the narcissist, he's the rapist, he's the criminal. So, and suddenly that's when the media attention turned, and many people, honestly, even I thought, yeah, maybe he's a weird guy. Yeah, maybe he went too far. Suddenly there was a narrative. And I remember, hearing about this narrative, and then he fled into, he doesn't want to stand trial. He went, he left, he fled, he went into this embassy and stayed there. And that's where we are. And no, that's where we were for many years. And then he was dragged out of the embassy. The Ecuadorian, they were given money by, World Bank, America. Suddenly they changed everything, new government. They didn't want him anymore. Now he's been in prison for 2 years in horrible conditions, solitary confinement. And he's not convicted of anything. The Swedish prosecution, they dropped all the charges. In fact, there were no charges. There was never a charge. It was, they wanted to ask him questions. He said, I am here, you can come, but I'm not going to Sweden, because he was afraid of being extradited and all these things. So now, why am I saying that? I'm a doctor. I'm one of the doctors for Assange. It's a loose group of 300 doctors who have signed a statement, have signed basically on to this cause. We are not legal experts, but we are medical experts, say what he's going through is torture. And he has been going through torture for many years because he was under 24/7 surveillance. They wouldn't let doctors go to his embassy, hideout, basically, or it was hard. And now he's under this stress and the duress condition. He is not convicted of anything. America wants him. America wants him, and prosecution wants to give him 175 years in prison in a dungeon, basically, as we all know. They don't say he's a journalist. So it's so crazy now. America is making this big push. Secretary Blinken, it's the journalism, the day of free journalists. There was this journalist day, right? The press freedom day. It's bizarre. So he's a journalist. He won many awards. He's a journalist. Big newspapers spoke out for him. He's a journalist. What is at stake is freedom of speech. It is, and it's just like some inner circles, are in the government. And I'm not only saying US, it's the UK, it's even the Germany. They all think if somebody does that, if somebody reveals our secrets, we will be really, we want to get this person. So it's beyond any imagination, and we decry the treatment that Alexei Navalny is receiving, right, in Russia. But we have our own Alexei Navalny, that's Julian Assange. And you can go all through all these things that are in the media, or that people say, yeah, he did this, he did this. Well, first of all, he always redacted his releases. There's recordings where he talked to the State Department and warned them that other groups were releasing the data without redaction. So he while he wanted to know the public about things, he never wanted to harm anyone. So even the prosecution, they couldn't show any evidence. They were asked, so who was in danger? Who was killed because of these Assange revelations? Nobody. There's also revelation in court that there was some people once considered killing him, poisoning him, like Navalny. And this is court documented. So it's not. So there are these things that. And the final, for me, the what really pushed me to is there was a United Nations. There's a United Nations rapporteur on torture. His name is Niels Meltzer. He's a lawyer from Switzerland, but also has a Swedish-Swiss lawyer. He is the United Nations rapporteur on torture. He first thought what many people thought, well, he's a nerd and he maybe did something wrong and whatever, he stole something and so. But he was asked to go there and look and see how, and check him out and check out what is going on, how is he treated. He took two scholars with him, two doctors who I know, who I've talked to, who I know. I'm in the World Psychiatric Association. I'm the secretary for scientific sections. One section is on torture and persecution, consequences of torture and persecution. I know the guy who did it, very famous Catalan psychiatrist. He went there together with a very famous professor from Portugal. They examined him. They saw all these signs of torture, and it's clear. And everybody now says release him. Everybody says that. Media outlets, Amnesty International. And first of all, the legal aspect is he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't break into anything. He just he got the data from someone. And the other hand is the medical. That's where we look. Even the best, they decided, the court actually said we cannot send him to America because he will die there, basically, in this prison system. But yet they kept him in this prison waiting for because America has lodged an appeal. So this is the situation, and I've already talked now too much, but this is how I got involved. I see it from a medical point of view. But this is a test case for unconditional freedom of speech. And you know what? It's not a Democrat or Republican thing for the American audience here. You have diehard Republicans. You have these weirdos. I actually like him. Thomas Massey. He's a House. He's a Republican from Kentucky. He's kind of a weirdo. It's that guy who made everybody come in last year, despite the pandemic, and vote on the floor. He said, in the Constitution doesn't say that we can do this remotely, whatever. He said he basically wanted Assange. He's a libertarian in a way, right? Like Rand Paul and all these. He asked Trump to pardon him. He didn't do it because there is maybe a deep state, and this is not conspiracy theory. I think there is a deep state, which is the reason of state, that when you attack the basic foundation of the state, or when you reveal secrets, then every government gets nasty. It's not only U.S. And that's where we are. But as people who believe in freedom of speech, we need to fight this.
Yeah. It is like unbelievably important. Like it's an unbelievably important issue. Well, there's several issues intertangled. I mean, the free speech is the main one, but also what you alluded to, the deep state. I mean, it's like, obviously there is one. There's one in every state. Like there's obviously like a hidden thing you don't see in the public. Obviously, the question is, how big is it? Who's involved? What are they trying to do? What are their ethics, so to speak? Like, to what lengths will they go in order to accomplish their objectives, whatever they are?
Again, it's nothing to do with conspiracy theory. We're not, but I think it is it's kind of natural to have a deep state, because when you have an intelligence service that tries to, protect your country, and then you see something that maybe then this guy Assange comes and steals your secrets, you are mad, right? You are mad or whatever, right? And it's this, they should step down and say, okay, we did a terrible mistake. First of all, of these guys who shot these, this was a mistake. Look, we teach our kids like golden rule and all that stuff, and sometimes say you're sorry, did something wrong. Hey, I'm German. I'm a permanent resident of the United States. I love America. I feel more American in America. I have my flag all the time out there, and I believe in, I think, I don't like this America bashing that Europeans typically do, and because they don't understand it. I live a very American way. My son is a U.S. citizen. I hopefully will be one day, and but I say, look, yes, you guys, you soldiers, the military, you did something wrong, but you do also very great many good things, right? And Germany is where we are because America, attacked Nazi Germany, right? And so it's not. But why don't you say, look, we did a mistake here, we shouldn't do it. And yes, we were even so stupid we couldn't protect our own data, and WikiLeaks showed it. We're sorry. Why don't people do that? They could say it. And then people would say, well, maybe the CIA has a human touch, and yes, okay, don't do it again.
Yeah, let me actually try to answer that. I don't know if it was meant rhetorically, but I've actually pondered that question for so long. Why do politicians or bankers or whomever, with a lot of power, why don't they just admit like mistakes? And instead they operate on like a principle of like deny till you die, right? Just like we never
Right.
we and
Right.
Here's what I've got to, and you tell me if you think there's any truth to that. Truth to this, but I think that it comes down to fear on an individual level, like a person, let's say they're a politician, fear of either losing their power, losing their reputation, losing their sort of friend group, to be honest. And they're typically friends with other politicians, in their own country and in foreign countries. I think it's fear of loss. That's what I think it is. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just sitting around thinking about it.
Yeah.
But that's what I think, and people in intelligence agencies. I think they're afraid of losing their organization, their power, their influence. I think that's what it is. I think it's fear of loss. What do you think?
Oh, I think, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think everybody encounters that, and it's like maybe in Asia, in Asian society, it's losing face, and I think sometimes it's very liberating. We all know that when we are, little kids, when they, who stole the cookie from the cookie jar, what I mean is like we are in our lives, we've all been there where we had to admit something and it felt awkward, but there's also a relief at one point, right? So that's why the Christian church has this idea of confessions. There is something to it, and I don't know why I would have so much more respect for politicians or military guys if they just said, yes, this was totally wrong. And I don't even, but here in our society, when you do something wrong, if it's, especially now with like what people might consider cancel, what people call cancel culture, when you do something, when you say a certain word now, whatever, suddenly you cannot even, the apology is not enough. You have to step down. You are done. So that makes it even worse. So why not, if it's so egregious, okay, but these guys, these military commanders, they could say, look, yes, we shouldn't have done that. This was awful. And, these guys should be punished, but maybe not for life, but we did something wrong. Assange reported that. We don't want to do this again. I would have so much more respect, or for a politician, so much more, and I don't understand why these rules that we teach our kids, that we consider in line with most philosophies, religions, why we don't apply them in politics.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. Of course, I think it should apply. It's like, but that's sort of the ethics we're like implicitly teaching people is, authority can do what they want. and it sort of like plays into our psyche. Like was it the Stanley Milgram experiment where he gave the shocks of progressively increasing voltage
Oh yeah,
back in
yeah,
the 60s or whenever it was,
right.
and the experiment must continue. The experiment must
Yes,
continue.
right,
And
yeah,
people, that kind of showed, for anyone who doesn't know the experiment, I'll link to a video where you can watch
right,
about it. But like
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
the whole outcome is people just listen to authority. They're very trusting of authority, and I think our education system reinforces that, because there's an authority figure at the front of the room. They have all the answers, and you can learn all the answers from the authority figure. And if you need to go to the bathroom, you raise your hand, you get permission from the authority figure. And it's like, I mean, it's so bizarre. I mean, we're so used to it, but it's a very, very bizarre system. And it just feeds into, the people at the top can do what they want, and the rest of us just follow along.
Although I must say, the school that my kids attended last year in upstate New York, I mean, that's not like this. I always ask my kids what they can eat. Everybody can eat and, you know, eat and drink during class. Yeah, they don't want to, answer the question. They don't answer. So it was very relaxed, actually. So it's not like what you just said. There may still be places like what you said.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's very exciting. All right. I have faith. I have faith. Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know about the ethics and the inconsistencies for sure. But yeah, so what do you think, the Assange controversy? How do you think it's going to end? I mean, like, do you have faith? Are you optimistic that he'll be released
Well,
someday?
I'm optimistic. I mean, first of all, we have a first uh, verdict in terms of the judge. She berates her is her name. She basically said we will not extradite him because um, that's based on the psychiatric assessment because he will suffer and he will commit suicide. There was a previous case where they didn't extradite someone from England because of that. But that's nice in a way, but this is from the medical side, that's all we had hoped for. Well, that's what we had hoped for, but we also would have hoped that um, in this verdict there would have been some mention of the whole political aspect, freedom of speech, journalism, and that was not. Basically, the judge basically said, "Yeah, the prosecution has a case, and they should do that. They can do that, but we won't extradite him because so and so." Now America files or has filed appeal, and let's see how it moves forward. I'm in touch with, of course, I know all the folks that support him. I know I mean, not personally, but we exchange notes. His partner, and he has two kids, and his mother, and so forth. So I'm in touch with these folks. I mean, this is a horrendous suffering, and again, for journalism, it is. Yeah. So I just hope that we were very hopeful that they wouldn't extradite him. I hope that in the end this will stand. I still hope that the new Attorney General Merrick Garland will at one point say, "Hey, just they don't even have to say could say we don't do it anymore. Why? Just and it could be dangerous. It could also be detrimental. Once he is in America, he could say things in court, whatever. You don't know. But the problem is, he will be if this case were to go here, and he would be treated not very nicely. He would be all these cases in that case. These espionage things, and all. They go to a certain court in Alexandria. It's very secretive, so it won't be the regular thing. And that's the other thing, and that is the Espionage Act. I mean, he is being sought. I mean, they want him they're using the Espionage Act from what is that, 1914 or whatever, like 50. This is crazy, and he is not a spy. First of all, he's not an American, right? So he is not. He was not a government. So people compare Snowden and him. Snowden, you can do another. I think for me, it's a different category. He's a U.S. citizen. He worked for the U.S. government. He signed on to this job. He pledged not to whatever, divulge any, to keep these things secret. and he didn't. So, right? But Assange didn't. He is not a U.S. citizen. He is Australian. He's a journalist. And why try him, under the Espionage Act? So these are the things that are so unheard of. And again, it is not something that only it is. There are the Republicans. Sarah Palin was for him. Again, the Libertarians. That's why I'm not. For me, I don't judge the world in Republicans, and even some Trump Republicans. There's some who support Julian Assange. On the other hand, you have Democrats like Andrew Yang, now the candidate for mayor in New York City. He says, yeah, he should stand trial. He should be extradited. So it's not like, so that's where the deep state is not confined to any party. It's something else. It's there's a rage. Somebody wants to get him. Somebody wants to punish him. I'm still hopeful. I still hope that there will be some forces, elements, maybe in the government now, the current government, that will say, okay, let's stop this.
Yeah. Well, whoever it is at the top who's trying to get him, I mean, that's the ego, right? That's like the.
Oh, absolutely. It's an ego. It's like a male thing, an ego thing, whatever. It's this. It's like somebody felt totally pissed and whatever, and they want.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I don't want any power anywhere resembling that, because I don't I don't want to get in touch with that side of myself, where you're just like, so like you just want to use, like, I don't know, trillions of dollars of infrastructure and people to just take out one person, and just, or obviously probably multiple people, but in this case, one. Like, that's so crazy to me. It's so hard to wrap my head around. Like,
Yeah.
just having no compassion for any of the people involved, like any of the people you give orders to, let's say, or or you pay money to do things. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
Yeah, and as I said, humans do make mistakes, and even those people, even those guys who shot these people in Iraq, which was revealed in that video. Look, people say, yeah, they are not, they are free. Julian Assange is not, but I don't wish them any. I don't think that they should be, sent. They should be thrown in jail for 100 years, whatever. No, even these people, what they said was awful, appalling, and what they did, but also they were in an environment, in a war zone, where testosterone runs high, where I wouldn't want to be in this situation. And they had maybe images of 9/11 in their head. So there's a lot of, I can also feel for them. I don't want, so yes, what they did, but this is war zone and bad things happen. But just call them bad and then try not to do this anymore. That's all I'm saying. So I hope that some generals, whatever CIA folks see that. And I get, I'm not against their work or whatever, right? I'm not a radical anarchist, whatever. I just think,
it's tough. I mean, again, even just the soldier's mentality. Like, I've never served in the armed forces. I can't even imagine what it would be like to go through that training and then be on a battlefield. I cannot even fathom it.
No, me neither. I was a conscientious objector in Germany back then, when it was mandatory military service, and then it changed. But at that time, you had to write basically a long essay why you don't want to be, and you had to do something else. You had to work. I worked in a hospital or so. On the other hand, I'm not anymore like this. I'm not. You get older, right? When the younger you are, the more left you are. The older you are. So it's this, and I'm not anymore against military or so. I see there is a need. Look, think of, at one point, I would like to see America, and in the end, it will be America defending Taiwan when China attacks them. You know what I mean? So, and of course, it's unfortunate what happened in Afghanistan. It didn't work out. Maybe, yes, we have to withdraw, but as soon as we are gone, all the Taliban will be back and torturing people there again. So, I think we need military, but sometimes we don't use it wisely, or I don't know. It's too complicated. But I'm not. What I want to say is, I'm not anti this and anti this. I think one can have arguments for both sides, and I try sometimes to I try to have a dialectical approach to things. And
Yeah, I try to be the same way, and I'm not an expert on any of these issues. I'm just like thinking through little by little, you know. So you did mention China though, and we were going to talk about the Uyghur genocide. So I know very little about this because anytime I like read anything, it just it bothers me too much, and I have to just kind of walk away from it. So for folks who don't know, can you kind of just like briefly summarize what's going on?
well, okay, people have come to know China as this is a big country. You see it on the map, but of course, it's a country that, in its present form, encompasses many nationalities, right, and many languages. Many in the Far East, you have that part that the Chinese call Xinjiang. It has been part of the Chinese um, empire in the old days. It was always there's always been affiliation. I mean, there have been many peoples going through, right? Turkish people, Turks come from that area as well. That's why they speak a Turkish language there. Um, so they are Muslims. They're not Han Chinese. This is a Turkey. There are Kazakhs. There are Kyrgyz. There are. Then you have Mongolia. In Mongolia, you have so many so many nations there. Now, and there were times when they had a Uyghur Republic at one point, or it's called East Turkestan. You know, this is actually the flag of East Turkestan here. Um, I I traveled there a long time ago. The ancient Silk Road. I did in the when there was still the Soviet Union. I did Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. I did in 1990. I did the whole Silk Road along the Taklamakan Desert and through the mountains, over the big these 5,000 meters, like 15,000 feet, one of the highest mountain passes into Pakistan. I mean, it's an amazing landscape, beautiful sites, and great people. And of course, this was still an Oriental town, Kashgar, for instance. Far, but China has what they did in Tibet. Of course, China wants to make this Chinese, Han Chinese, and they have now the Uyghurs are a minority there, right? That's what they did in Tibet. And I remember the times when I was in 1990. I walked through the old towns. This was an Oriental town with mud buildings, um, beautiful, like you would see in maybe in the Arabian Peninsula. I would sit down with folks in their homes, have a cup of tea. These old markets, these old bazaars, marketplaces, and the camels everywhere, and Orient lifestyle. There was hardly any Chinese in those days to be seen. But of course, then over the years, China. I mean, at that time when I was there, I mean, China. What was China? Nothing. It was a billion people already then, but they were all they rode a bike, and they made cheap products for the West. But of course, China has become a superpower. China is a superpower now, and they also want to be a superpower in their own country. They control each and every person's life. It's not only the minorities or what they consider minorities. I consider these folks. I think they should all be independent. That's another thing we can talk about. But uh, but they want to control each and every one. The point system. There's facial recognition everywhere. That's a brutal dictatorship. And under Xi Jinping, it has become a totalitarian regime. This is basically North Korea with a little bit more capitalism, or with a capitalist touch. So now we have a population that is Muslim, that is not Han Chinese. They have their own language. They have their own script. I mean, they write Arabic, and they're Muslims. They have a lot of kids because they have a traditional lifestyle. And then, of course, came 9/11. Under this pretext, maybe there were some radicals, maybe there were some, throwing bombs. China used that, and there was one attack in Urumqi and one in southern China, where Uyghurs were involved apparently, but they used that as a pretext. Now they have these huge camps. We're not talking about camps for 1,000 people. Most likely millions. They say millions, 1 to 2 million are in camps, re-education camp. So the funny thing is, China says, no, these are just vocational training camps, education camps. So even if this were the case, what nation on earth, what free nation, or what country that believes that wants to give its citizens freedom and all possibilities would put them in a camp to study or to learn a new job or something like this. So even that, even if they say it's only vocational training, well, it's not. It is a brainwashing. They want, and there are so many reports where they send somebody to your home. There, a family of four will be assigned four government minders. They will sleep with you in your bed. The woman will have, like, a couple will be separated. The woman will sleep with that woman, and the man and the kid. They want to hear, oh, you speak Uyghur. Why don't you speak Chinese? Oh, there's a Quran. Well, you shouldn't do that. That is that's happening. Now, people say Chinese say it's not true. They always show them dancing, their propaganda is how happy they are. They always show them dancing. That's the only thing they show. But we know that in China, there's organ harvesting of prisoners. It's still going on. There's so many, there's genetic, I'm a psychiatric geneticist, there's genomic surveillance where the Uyghurs were tapped or were targeted. They were made believe that's, they had to give blood for, and now they have all their genomes basically, right? They didn't do it with the Han Chinese. You hear about rape in these camps. You hear about forced sterilization. That is going on. Now, China will say there's one guy, Adrian Zenz, who is actually a German. He lives in Minnesota now. He's a born-again Christian, and that's why he has a mission. But he is also a scientist, and he actually got all these data. They were Chinese data. They were data from China. He discovered a leak, and everything is written there, right? Like in Nazi Germany, where the where the Holocaust was neatly documented. So China also has documents basically showing that what they do. So this guy is now on China's list of folks that they really hate, but it's not only him. There's footage, aerial footage. They bulldozer old graveyards because they want to get rid of this culture, right? They just, and I was there, as I said, in 1990, and over the years with the advent of internet, I followed. Oh, how does Kashgar now look like? Oh, they bulldoze these old areas like they did in Lhasa, Tibet. They still have the Potala Palace, the iconic building, or where the Dalai Lama used to be, and the old town. That's all destroyed. They put their ugly Chinese skyscrapers there. And so these, over the years, I watched from distance how this once thriving Oriental town became like a museum. They have an old wall, they have an old alley or so, but that's like a museum. It's like Disneyland. And so over the years, and now I got in touch with the World Uyghur Congress, with the East Turkestan National Movement there in Washington. The World Congress is in Munich. So I'm now actually trying, and tonight I will actually have I spent some money on that. I mean, research money. We put up a framework to interview Uyghurs that survived these concentration camps. We want to look at the mental health toll. And so tonight I have a conference call with Uyghurs and with experts, legal scholars, psychiatric scholars, and so forth to assess that. And but what is really frightening, and I'm trying to do this now to raise awareness. Together with other scientists, we try to publish just a paper, call to action, or we're going to start a debate on should we boycott Chinese science. Why? Because Chinese doctors, Chinese scientists, if they are called upon to do horrible things, they will not say no, because otherwise they will be subjected to the same treatment. So should we consider them still our colleagues? What about Nazi Germany? When there were, for me, it's kind of the same. I'm from what was former Nazi Germany. I grew up in Nuremberg. I was told to stand up, to speak up when I see what I see. And That's what I'm doing right now. And we try to publish that letter to start a debate, provocative debate. None of the big journals, Lancet, the editor of Lancet, wrote to me, "Yeah, dear Thomas, I understand this is I know your ideas or your mission is sound, whatever I think, but I don't want to jeopardize our editors in China." That's where we are, because all Western scientific journals have editors in China. China is buying into these journals. So you cannot start. They published the Lancet, the premier medical journal out of the UK, but published by the publishing house Wiley. I mean, they published our letters, about the torture of Julian Assange. So you can criticize the West, which of course you should, right? We are free society. But when you want to criticize China, you can. Where are we? This is a Western journal, but they have interest there, big money. So we cannot get this published. The Journal of the American Medical Association, British Medical Journal, they all turned down with bogus explanations, saying, "Well, we don't believe that a boycott is good. It's a good idea." And then we said, "We didn't tell you. You don't have to answer that question. We want to put this question out there. Why did you publish an article next to it saying boycott is not a good idea? That's a scientific discussion. That's what you normally do." They don't. They would do it for any other case, for any other, but China not anymore. So China is there. They are already there. And it's not the Chinese people. I have good Chinese friends. Come on. They are all victims of this. The totalitarian China is there. In America, I try to buy American. It's hard to do because everything is made in China. So look, we got to do something about it. It's not then there. I totally support the U.S. government. I even would have supported Donald Trump on this because I see a danger. And but it has to be for the right motives. And we are this Chinese, the new Silk Road, this belt, and what is it called? They are building poor. They are buying. They're putting people into the countries into horrible situations where they build things for them. They give them a loan. They build a highway or port city. Then they can't build it. They have to hire these. They get 5,000 Chinese migrant workers. They build this port in Karachi, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka. They cannot pay back. Now they're even in Montenegro. They build a highway in Europe, in Montenegro. They can't pay. Now they will get a share of the country. So that's what China does. They are already there. These are body snatchers. Sorry. And this is the Communist Party of China. This is Xi Jinping. This is danger. And we need to do something about it. And the Uyghurs is just one part. And that's the horrible human toll. And that's... but there are other things, and we have to wake up.
Yeah, there's so much. There's so much to unpack there. But yeah, it seems like the common theme is just this idea of, I mean, I don't know what to call it other than world domination. I mean, that's kind of like the theme.
Yeah, it's not Nazi Germany 2.0. I mean, come on, it's like I can tell you that because I'm from Nazi Germany. Yeah,
yeah, from the area.
No,
yeah. So what's the resistance movement? Because I look at the United States and like I don't follow world politics too much. I mean, I don't really watch the news really of anything. But like I look at the current administration in the United States, and it seems like, if I'm just being objective, it seems like they're almost controlled directly by China. I mean, like it just kind of like feels that way, looking at what they say, what they don't say, what their tone is, the things they choose to mention in the media, the things they leave out. So I don't know. What's your sense?
Well, I think the very fact that the outgoing administration, you can say bad things about them, but they made this, they made the designation. They designated China what's happening against Uyghurs as a genocide. So now that sticks, that stays. And other countries have followed suit. I mean, UK, the Netherlands or Belgium, right? So it's taking some hold, and so that was good. But of course, on a day-to-day basis, we all know we are so dependent on China. Look, I'm here. This is. I love Lenovo laptops. I love their keypad, but I hate it because that's made in China, and we are so dependent. We cannot, there's nothing, the West should stand up because this is maybe made with slave labor. This is made, and we're all guilty of that. when we buy Nike, when we buy we all know that. I mean, this is but China is definitely the epitome of evil at that point. Not the Chinese people again, it's the ideology. I mean, they suffer too, right? I mean, not only the Uyghurs, but also the Han Chinese. So, but so yes, how are we? We are dependent, and I hope we wake up, and maybe we should all spend a little. Why can't we build a laptop, an IBM laptop anymore in the US? Or well, yes, it's more expensive. So we subsidize a lot of things. You know what they do in Germany? China buys all these small. Germany has these very famous for its small and these medium companies that are world market leaders on weird things. I don't know, on pots or stoves or whatever. Germany is big in that. They have these companies, 500 to 1,000 people. There's a company making fish feed, just for aquarium. Like, the world market leader. You would think, why? But it's a world leader. So you have all these companies. Or there's a company making equipment for fire trucks. So bought by Chinese. A famous German kitchen maker, bought by Chinese. There's also, so they come and buy, and they change the philosophy. It's not anymore so they change so much. They just want to buy, not for the sake of we're saving this company. They want to export their way of thinking and their philosophy, which is a horrible philosophy. I mean, everybody has seen it, what happened to Hong Kong, right? Within a few weeks, it's done. Yeah, and Taiwan will be next. We have to do something. Because this is, they are there. And again, it is a philosophy that is frightening.
Yeah, as I think more and more about it, and it kind of like grow up and spend time thinking, I don't really see the world so much as like a clash of humans or culture. Well, I shouldn't use the word cultures. I'm trying to be very precise here. Um, like people, the way you mentioned, Chinese people or American people or German people or whatever. It's more of a clash of ideas. It's an idea, and whether it's an idea like capitalism or socialism or whatever. I mean, there's no shortage of words we could use to embody certain ideas, but the ideas that China's putting forward is, domination, submission, totalitarianism, and so forth. Like, just sheer ruthlessness, and it seems to be completely devoid of compassion, like coexistence, toleration. Like, those things are completely
Yes.
absent.
Well, I think it's not it's deeply ingrained. It's not part of their culture. You cannot, it's a different culture. It's a very hierarchical culture, and you have to pay respect to older folks, and that's in there. It's not, all our values in the Western world are, of course, based on not some Christianity, but this idea of, the era of enlightenment and all these things. I don't know. Has China had? I think China doesn't has never had something like it. It's the same in Japan. They don't have it, or so, or they have other things. They have other things, but this philosophy lends itself to an abuse that we see now by a totalitarian guy. And as you say, yes, there are different ideas, and it's not the people. And it's okay to have different systems. I'm privileged in that I can live in Germany or Europe and America, like on a change on a monthly basis, and I totally accept I would call it brutal capitalism in America, and the more refined capitalism in Europe. It is meaning there's more social, there's a more network fall back to. It's not so brutal. But of course, the other thing is, when you're in America, the very fact that it's so brutally capitalistic, it means that some ideas can get hold, and great ideas can be put into practice quickly because money is there, and you don't have to care about giving this money to for some social services. You know what I mean? So it can create. So that's why I love my neighborhood where I live. in America, it's beautiful. But of course, let's face it, actually, we are all, I don't personally believe in this notion of like structural racism, and it's a tough issue. But I know I'm racist because I like my neighborhood. I pay a lot of money to be in this good neighborhood. And by doing so, I accept that there are no poor people and there are no black folks there. And I say, well, sorry, yeah, it's not a good idea, but I love my neighborhood. It's safe. That's race. That, you know what I mean? So in a way, so I think there are, you don't have to agree with me, but no, you don't know what I mean is there are, that is racism we accept that. On the other hand, the very fact that you have then these beautiful neighborhoods, they have a great school. This great school will lead to very good education. Where my kids went, this was a beautiful, great education. I'd never get this in Germany. And then but on the other hand, that means this good education is missing 10 miles further west in a bad neighborhood. So in Germany, you would try to balance that. And so there are different concepts. We will not be able to have one world concept. You cannot have it. I think what is important is to see the differences and maybe try to balance it to a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the balance probably happens naturally, with moving one direction and sort of, back and forth over time. And I think that's why, not to go a totally different direction, but I think that's why so many things in pop culture, like books or, like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or all these different, cultural phenomenons, it's all like the battle of good and evil. Like all the time, like that's every story. It's just a battle of good and evil, and like
right.
And so, like,
Right.
I mean, that's reality, and that's what we see. And sometimes evil is winning, and sometimes good is winning, and then it goes back and forth, and it's never going to end. So, yeah. So let me just maybe we can get some closure on the China issue. Relating it to Nazi Germany, obviously that culminated in World War II. Do you think the China situation now is going to culminate in a World War III, or do you see it resolving some other way?
Well, as a German, I would say it was good that it culminated in World War II to end it, right? Well, but not many people will say, but it was back then it was the only solution, I think, right? So okay, I personally believe that you could take care of these things by economic things. The problem is China is so big. China is, but if each and every one of us try to limit some consumption or try to buy American, whatever, even it's more expensive, whatever, so, but of course that's petty things. I think it would be very important to show China wants to save face. And we shouldn't give them platforms to showcase how great they are, because they aren't in terms of their atrocities they commit. Olympic Games, yes, let's boycott these Olympic Games. But these Olympic committees, these are thugs. For me, they are mafias. They don't care anything. They held Olympics in 1936 in Berlin. They do it. They say, oh, sports shouldn't do politics. I mean, atrocities, that's not politics, right? So, and don't give them a platform to showcase how great they are, and let Uyghurs dance, or something like this. So I hope that with some initiatives, Congressman Katko from Syracuse, he is Republican, but he's very outspoken about boycotting Olympics, Winter Olympics next year in Beijing. I mean, how could you do this? How could you hold a Winter Olympics in a country that has 2 million people in camps? It sounds so. It's not politics. It's not politics. Come on, I mean, you could rather hold it in Cuba. Yes, it's a communist dictatorship, but they don't have they don't have people in camps. I mean, it's not like, yes, like every country, most people in most countries in the world are dictatorships. Let's face it. Out of how many official countries are there? 200 or so. Well, you can count maybe some Northern European countries, and the further south you go, they are not dictatorships. But in Italy, the mafia actually runs the show. So is it a real free free country. You know what I mean? So there are not so many countries where our ideal ideal concept of how a government should be is actually implemented. But China, come on, the evil is happening right there. We cannot go there. So we should do this. We should make sure that we should protect Taiwan, great people. We should make sure that why not start establishing diplomatic ties with them? Come on. If China says, oh, will China really sever its ties? Will China stop selling things to the US if we recognize Taiwan? Oh, but let's put in the Strait of Taiwan a few aircraft carriers. I would be happy. Further, I was a conscientious objector. I'm no longer. I want to see Taiwan protected. So, we can do a few things.
Yeah, it's so tough, and like, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things I don't know, but all I can do is my best. But I do want to ask you, with the time we have left, we haven't talked about Catalonia, but we sort of hinted around it, maybe some of the themes, because we've talked about the idea of the nation state, and small nations and independence, and dual citizenships, U.S. and Germany, and sort of individual sovereignty and individual mobility. And I think this is going to be a major theme over the next few decades. The idea of the sovereign individual versus sort of like the nation state. So what's going on in Catalonia? I think a lot of Americans don't even know what that is, or what the issue is around.
Yeah. Well, okay. You have Spain. It's a country. In that Spain, of course, over the last maybe 1,000 years, Roman Empire. Then, of course, you had the Franks from the north. You had the Arabs pushing up south. Then they were pushing up north. Then they were driven out again. You had very prominent kingdoms: the Kingdom of Aragon in the north, the Kingdom of Castile in the center. The Queen of Castile was Isabella, and then you had now I'm blanking on the name. The guy from Aragon. They married. They were the Catholic kings. They formed what then was basically Spain, and they drove out the Arabs, right? And so that is kind of the foundation of modern Spain. But there was a time when Portugal was part of it, whatever. But the Kingdom of Aragon, which also developed or was part, or Catalonia, what is now Catalonia, was part of that, and they had their own language, but they still have it. It's like Catalan. So that in these kingdoms, they were actually, while they were united like Scotland and in England, and they were still very separate in their entities and then the Catalan courts and the Catalan nobility. They had their own rules, and they had their own kind of self-rule, home rule. So, and then there was this famous the War of Spanish, was called inheritance of the Spanish 1713. So at one point there were two kingdoms, it was a European war in a way. There were European powers supporting the Habsburg family, and then the Bourbons, they were the rulers of France. And so in the end, the Bourbons, they won, and they conquered Barcelona. And from that day on, since that time, the Catalan language has been banned several times. They wanted to get rid of Catalan national feeling and so forth. These stories exist all over the world, right? This thing in France, the same thing. People think of France before the French Revolution. French was the minority language there. In the south, you had Catalan, you had Occitan, you had Breton. But when one country emerges as a nation state or a centralist state, they want to impose their language, their rule on these other. A good example is Switzerland, where it doesn't have to work like that. You have one country, but they have four languages, and they are not forced to speak the other language. You have to speak the language of where you are right now. So it can work. But centralist states like Spain, and of course then came the Franco dictatorship, and Catalan was banned until Franco died in '78. They got their new constitution. but Franco installed he said, well, he already picked somebody to become king. And so they were given a constitution which has democratic, at prima vista, the face of it looks very, it is democratic, of course, elections and everything, but they have a king. But they had to accept after the end of the Franco regime, they were given this constitution and say, now vote on it. What I would have thought, what I think should have happened is, okay, we had episodes where there were times when there was a civil war, there was no king anymore. So why don't we go back to the republic, which was abolished by Franco? Why do we accept the fact that Franco installed a king, and now we have to take this? But they were given this constitution, king. The Catalans can have their sort of a home rule. They can have their own language, fine, everything. And so they accepted it. But of course, after like 50 years of dictatorship, you accept everything that is much better than this. So I studied there, and that's why I love Catalonia. I speak the language. And so the Catalans for many years, when I was there in 1994, the idea of an independent Catalonia was like something for nerds. It was more like, yeah, it's, but now we're at 50% plus, right? 50 plus. And there was a time, it was in 5 years, 6 years ago, or actually, no, maybe longer, the Catalan government or the Catalan people together with Spain, they agreed on a statute that would give them more financial authority. And more symbolic also, that in the constitution, it would say they are a nation, and so things. And actually, the Parliament of Spain agreed to it. The Catalan people in a referendum agreed, but then the right-wing party that was in the opposition back then said, no, we'll never accept it. There's only one nation, that's Spain. I went to the Supreme Court, and they are all very right, actually, the right. And then they trashed that. And that was for Catalans a signal saying, for those that want independence, so they don't want to listen to us. They don't want to give this to us. The only thing we have to do, we have to go through full-fledged independence. Then came, of course, that famous referendum that was illegal because it was not allowed by Spain. And Carles Puigdemont, the then Catalan president, held this thing. And they were so clever. They did it, the whole people, they were hiding these ballot boxes. They were doing it online. And then, of course, now they are all, I know them all, this is the sign for Catalan political prisoners. They are in prison. I know their families. I know Carles Puigdemont. I'm president of the Association Foreign Friends of Catalonia. We are on Twitter. I want Catalan independence, but I could live with something else. But what we want is that people in a certain region that have unique character features, that in terms of they have their own culture, their own language, they should have the right to vote. They have to, like Scotland, they should decide whether they want to be independent or not. Then Spain would say, yes, they can go through the Spanish political system. We can have a referendum, but all of Spain has to say yes. Well, that's ridiculous. Will never work. It's like a divorce where an abusive husband says, okay, no, you can only be divorced. You can only divorce me if I agree too. So that it should be that region, and so that's where we are right now. And these people who pushed for that referendum, they're in prison now, 10, 12 years. They never did anything violent, right? And the problem is that the right wing parties are rising in Spain. They are now trying. They pulling everyone. They're trying everyone in court. People who opened the schools for voting. People who counted the votes. They're all now considered sort of criminals because they participated in the referendum. Spain sent in police. They beat them up, and that's awful. And my take on independence movement is very simple. We live in a world which is good, where we cherish individuality. That's why we have LGBTQ. That's why we have non-binary, sex, gender. We could say, wait a minute, how many people are transgender? Why do we care? It's just 1% or whatever. What the heck? No, we believe that there are individual rights. And what is, it doesn't hurt me if somebody's, is now can choose one to five, and gender, sex, whatever. But when it comes to states, we still have this idea that no, there should be only one nation state, big state, and there's no individuality. Why? As I said, I think Switzerland is a great example. In Switzerland, how big is Switzerland? It's like Switzerland is as big as maybe the state of Connecticut or whatever. They have four languages: Swiss German, French, and Italian, and they have an ancient Latin, like a late Latin language in the mountains. So they have these four national languages. And when you go from Zurich in the Swiss German part to Geneva in the French speaking part, you have to speak French. You cannot say, well, I'm Swiss and I'm from Zurich. I want my kids to be taught in school in France, in German. But when you go from Madrid to Barcelona, why? I would say, no, it's only Catalan, period. 100 years ago, hardly anybody spoke Spanish there, because then came many immigrants from southern Spain, and they, but this is the idea. Centralist state says there's one language. You can have maybe other regional language, but still everyone has to speak the national language. In Switzerland, there is no national language. You can be a Swiss citizen from Geneva. You don't speak Italian, you don't speak German, and you are still a full-fledged citizen, but when you go to Zurich and you want to find your way, want to be able to do business there, well, you maybe as well, you have to learn German, period. But you're not forced. So it's possible. And they have so much, they have 26 little cantons, or 24, and they have their own tax laws. It's crazy, actually. It's crazy. But it's the epitome for me for individual rights, where states give individual rights to regions, and it's possible. So the United States actually also has that. While I hate death penalty, I think, yes, if Arkansas wants to have the death penalty, I hate it, and it should be abolished. But the idea that states have the right to decide these things, and that in Nevada you have prostitution and the other countries not, the states not. Yes, it's their right. You know what I mean? Is I like federalism, and I personally believe there should be the right to secession. If Texas wants to, I think they should try it. I believe in. I don't care. I don't care about. I think the smaller countries are, the less dangerous they are, because if they turn rogue, who cares if they turn rogue? Look, Hungary and Poland, they're small. Well, Hungary is small, but they're turning really right-wing now, right? With Orban. And there's the European Union. We can't kick them out because we would need a unanimous vote. But Poland is the same now. Poland will protect Hungary, and Hungary will protect Poland. So they can do anything they want. It's not anymore a European democracy, but we can't do anything about it. But in the end, it's a small country. Who cares? But China, as a big country, turns rogue, is a problem. So the smaller the states are, the better it is. That's my take on independence movement.
Yeah, I think we share a lot of the same thoughts. I mean, yeah, it's pretty simple. Like, imagine if Connecticut tried to take over the world. Right. It'd be hilarious. It'd be a great joke. Yeah, but like if China tried it, it's it's pretty serious, obviously, as we're seeing. So yeah, well, geez, well, let's try to end on a good note here. Like, what as you look at the world, I know obviously we've talked about a lot of very, very serious issues, but is there anything that really gets you excited and optimistic as you look around the world, in the near future?
Personally, I think the world. There's this famous song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," right? This song. I mean,
yeah, Billy Joel.
World has. I think we are not at all better than folks 3,000 years ago. We are the same guys. We may not have the maybe the same horrible punishments anymore, but we sometimes still maybe in another way. The same principles of Machiavellistic principles of running nations still exist. So my bottom line is we haven't changed. And I think we will never change. That's what we are, right? It may look more sophisticated from the outside, but inside we haven't changed. But I think we have made progress in a way that we can get knowledge faster and to people. So while we haven't changed, and but there's a more democratization of the world. We get information out faster. We know we have. I mean, this is a discussion people have had with like social media. So I think we should use it to educate people about everything. And nobody has to. So I'm a fierce fighter for Catalan independence. Okay, right? Everybody knows me. I'm on Twitter. I get people who hate me, whatever. I don't block anyone because I like debating. I don't. I don't believe in this whole idea of blocking friends. So, so I think we should, as long as we share information and debate, I think we can get out of a lot of problems because the more you debate, at one point you might find common ground and could use that. So well, I'm optimistic. I'm not optimistic. We will not change. That's the first for me. We will not change. We are the same, but we have better tools at hand to help us maybe alleviate our flaws, to get, or at least smoothen them, or and it's called education, and it's called sharing knowledge. So we should do that, and yes, and also just sometimes accept that you do things that are not good, that are wrong. Just so a little bit of Christian confessions. Why not? So this it helps us. It helps us maybe be more humble. We need to be a little bit more humble and educate. But again, no, we won't change much, but we have to try. Let's do it this way. I know we won't change, but let's keep trying to change. That might help a bit.
I like it. Let's keep trying to change. Yeah, that's all you can do is control yourself, control your thoughts, your spirituality, yeah, your ethics. Every decision is a very important one. So awesome. Well, thank you. So I know you're on Twitter, obviously, and from there, people can find some other links that you post that are in your
Absolutely.
bio. Is there anywhere else you want to direct people, either like a website you have or anything else like that you want to share?
Well, if you wanna add links, I'm the executive board of the World Psychiatric Association. You will find that. That's where we do a lot of mental health works. This is our work on mental health. I think that's important. I'm a genetic researcher. I used until last year was the president of the International Society of Psychiatric Genetics. Also on the website, also on Twitter. Now, there are a few things that are dear to my heart in terms of my profession and work. So yeah, these are good links. Mental health, Catalonia, Assange. Doctors for Assange. There's so many. I mean, you will write a little introductory note anyway, and I'm happy to debate with people. I don't block anyone. I just I believe in debating. And I don't have to admit, but maybe there's no need for Catalan independence. But at that point, I think there is a need to. I want people to be able to, decide, or So let's give people options. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't hurt. If you have to give away something, I don't care if Germany were separate. Had independence movements. I don't care. I mean, I think, as I said, the smaller state, the less danger there is. Again, but we actually already had a better ending. We had a last word already, and a better one. But maybe you want to. I don't want to have the last word here.
Yeah, and I will agree with you. Like, if the United States, where I was born and raised and where I live now, if it somehow magically became 50 independent separate countries, that wouldn't bother me in the slightest. I'm not, it might be a good thing for the world so long as there were still a power to balance out the other nation states, but otherwise, if, China broke into, I don't know, 20 or 30 independent countries and Russia did and the United States, it'd probably be a great thing for the world.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't have to be carved in stone. It can then, you can always go back. In one of my first interviews, because they know me in Catalonia, I even said, yeah, why not independence now and make it 10 years and then reevaluate and then go back together, join again. I mean, and people say, what? So I try to be very creative. You can do many things. Why not? Be creative. Come on.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you.
Yeah, and
pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you sincerely for being a part of all those advocacy groups and so forth that you mentioned. I mean, that's amazing, because we need people to do that.
Look, there are so many things one can do, and I'm not the big guy for climate change, climate activism, because I'm flying so much. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be fair, but there's so many good causes, and I would say there are many more people that do really good it's just what you have to do, what it's dear to your heart, and I have personal connections with many of these things. That's why.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for that, and thank you
for being
here today. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I'll see you around Twitter.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right,
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.